and some folks were out there, enjoying the holiday cheer. But you sent us a ton of sources on time travel, so you're clearly ready to really dig deep into this. Are you prepping for like a New Year's debate, or are
Yeah.
you planning some epic movie marathon? What's the deal? Whatever it is, we're diving deep today, and I've got just the person to help us figure this whole time travel thing out.
Happy to be here.
Now, we all know the time travel tropes, right? You hop in a DeLorean, maybe zip through a wormhole, accidentally erase yourself from existence. It's all, captivating stuff. But where does the science fiction end, and where does the real science begin? Like, is time travel even remotely possible?
It's the big question, isn't it? And it might surprise you to know that the idea of time travel is ancient. It goes way back, long before H.G. Wells and his time machine. Humans were already telling stories about time travel.
Really? Older than Santa Claus. Come on, give me some examples.
Think like epic myths, legends. In the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, there's a story about King Ravida. He journeys to meet Brahma, and when he comes back to his kingdom, centuries have passed.
Wow.
And in Japanese folklore, there's Urashimataru, about a fisherman who finds this underwater kingdom, and when he returns to his village, 300 years have gone by. So these stories show how long humans have been thinking about messing with time.
So time travel's been in our imagination forever. But when did it go from myth to something that, at least sounds a little bit like science?
Well, I think that shift really started with H.G. Wells. The Time Machine, 1895, that book captured people's imaginations, and it laid the groundwork for so much of what we think about time travel. You can see its influence everywhere, from Doctor Who to Back to the Future. It's really ingrained in pop culture.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Seems like every movie these days has got some kind of time travel in it. But beyond just entertainment, is there any real science here?
Here's where things get really interesting. We've got to talk about Einstein and his theory of relativity. He completely changed how we think about time. He said it's not this absolute thing, it's relative. It can be affected by things like speed and gravity.
Hold on. Are you telling me time can actually speed up or slow down? Not just in the movies, but for real.
Yeah, exactly. It's a proven thing called time dilation. Imagine you're traveling super fast, like close to the speed of light. Time would actually pass slower for you, compared to someone standing still on Earth.
Whoa.
It's mind-bending, but it's real. They've even proven it using atomic clocks on airplanes. They tick a tiny bit slower than clocks on the ground because they're moving faster.
So those pilots are like time travelers, even if it's just like a fraction of a second.
In a way, yeah. And this idea of time dilation, it suggests that traveling into the future, at least one way, is theoretically possible.
Okay, future travel, I'm kind of starting to get that. But what about going back in time?
Yeah.
That's got to be where things get really complicated, right?
You're right. That's where we get into the realm of theoretical possibilities. And it gets a lot more complex. One idea that comes up is wormholes.
Wormholes, like those swirling tunnels of light you see in movies. Do those things actually exist? Could we hop in one and end up back in the Roman Empire? Or hanging out with dinosaurs?
They look really cool in movies, but wormholes are still theoretical. We haven't actually seen one. But they're possible solutions to Einstein's equations. Think of them as like shortcuts through space-time, connecting different points in space, and maybe different points in time.
So theoretically possible, but not exactly something I can book a flight for just yet.
Not quite. There are some big challenges. They might be super unstable, collapsing before you can even blink, and the energy it would take to create one. Astronomical, like way more than a supernova.
Yikes. Okay, maybe hold off on the dinosaur tours for now. But even if we could somehow figure all that out, wouldn't time travel, especially to the past, just create a bunch of paradoxes?
You're hitting on a really important point. Time travel to the past definitely brings up these potential paradoxes. And the most famous one is probably the grandfather paradox.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic. That's the one where you go back in time
Yeah,
and accidentally prevent your own birth, right?
exactly. Imagine you travel back and somehow cause your grandfather to die before he meets your grandmother. Well, if he never had kids, you wouldn't exist to go back in time in the first place. It just doesn't logically make sense.
But wait, if paradoxes are that big of a problem, how do time travel stories even work at all? Doesn't it just make the whole concept impossible?
Not necessarily. There are other theories that try to explain those paradoxes. One is the bootstrap paradox. It's about objects or information stuck in a kind of time loop without a clear beginning.
A time loop, like in Groundhog Day.
Kinda, but imagine this. You go back in time and you give Shakespeare a complete manuscript of Hamlet. He publishes it as his own, and it becomes the masterpiece we know today. So who really wrote Hamlet in that scenario? The The play just exists in this loop without a starting point. Right.
That's even more mind-blowing than the grandfather paradox. So our paradox is just something we have to deal with if we want to time travel? Or is there some way around them?
Well, one theory is the multiverse hypothesis. It says that any changes made to the past, they don't change our own WN timeline. They create a brand new timeline, a separate universe.
So instead of changing your own past,
Yeah.
you're basically making a whole new reality, like in Avengers,
Yeah.
Endgame,
Yeah.
with those alternate timelines, or in Loki, with all those different Lokis running around. Isn't that kind of a convenient way to just avoid the whole paradox thing?
It's definitely a really interesting idea. The multiverse theory says you can change the past without those contradictions, because each change creates a separate reality, totally distinct from the original.
Yeah, I'm seeing how the multiverse could be like a safety net for time travel. But even if we could time travel without messing everything up, wouldn't there be all sorts of ethical issues? I mean, messing with the past, even with good intentions, could have some serious consequences, right?
You're absolutely right. The ethics of time travel are maybe even more complicated than the science itself.
Like, what if someone went back in time and tried to stop some horrible historical event? Would that be the right thing to do? What about all the ripple effects? Could a small change in the past lead to something terrible in the future?
Exactly. Even little changes to the past could have huge consequences. We might think we're fixing things, but we could actually make things a lot worse. And then there's the ethics of bringing future tech back to the present.
Ooh, yeah. What if someone went to the future, grabbed some super advanced tech, and brought it back to our time? Would that be good or bad?
Well, it could definitely be disruptive. Imagine bringing back a cure for a disease, but only a few people could access it. Or what if advanced weapons fell into the wrong hands? There are so many ethical dilemmas to consider.
Wow, it's getting heavy. So time travel, at least to the future, seems possible in theory. But then you've got these paradoxes and all these ethical questions. What do you think? Would you travel to the past or future if you could? Or would you stick with the present?
It's definitely something to think about. It brings up so many questions.
It really does. And while we're pondering all of this, let's actually take a look at the research that's being done on time travel. Are there scientists out there trying to build a real-life time machine? We'll be right back to explore that. All right, we're back and ready to tackle the big question. Is anyone actually trying to build a real time machine? Like, are there scientists out there in some secret lab, maybe tinkering with a few DeLoreans?
Well, maybe not DeLoreans, but there are some brilliant people really pushing the limits of physics, trying to understand time and space in new ways.
Give me some names. Who are these time-bending pioneers? What are they working on?
One name you've probably heard is Kip Thorne. He's a theoretical physicist, done groundbreaking work on black holes and, those wormholes we talked about. He was even a consultant on the movie Interstellar, which actually explores some pretty wild time travel ideas.
So Hollywood's getting some real science in their time travel movies. That's pretty cool. What else are these scientists looking into?
Well, some researchers are diving into quantum mechanics, trying to see if it holds any clues about time travel.
Quantum mechanics. Isn't that where cats are both dead and alive at the same time? How does that relate to time travel?
It's definitely a mind-bending field, but the rules of time and space might be very different at the subatomic level. One idea is quantum entanglement. It's where two particles are linked, even when they're far apart.
Okay, I think I'm following. But how could that lead to time travel?
Well, imagine being able to use entangled particles to send a message back in time to yourself. Pretty crazy, right? That's the kind of possibility they're looking into.
Wow, that would change everything. So quantum mechanics is one path. What other research is going on?
There's also research into the nature of time itself. Is time really a straight line like we think? Or is it something more complicated, maybe even cyclical?
A giant time loop. That would definitely shake things up.
It would. And while we may not have a working time machine right now, just asking these questions and exploring these ideas is pushing our knowledge forward.
So maybe we can't book a trip to the dinosaurs just yet. But the science of time travel is definitely evolving. No pun intended.
Exactly. And while we wait for those big breakthroughs, there's actually a way we can all experience time travel right now.
Wait, what? We can time travel without a special machine? Tell me more.
Think about it this way. When we look at the stars, we're not seeing them as they are right now. We're seeing them as they were when the light left them, millions, maybe even billions of years ago.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So every time I look at the night sky, I'm looking into the past.
Exactly. The universe is like a giant time machine. The farther we look out into space, the further back in time we see.
Mind blown. So even if we can't physically time travel, we can still see the past, just by looking at the stars.
Precisely. Every time you look up at a star, you're seeing a little bit of the universe's history.
That's really amazing. It makes you realize how connected we are to everything and the vastness of space and time. But let's bring it back down to Earth for a minute. We've talked about the science and all the crazy paradoxes, but what about the ethics of it all? If we could time travel, wouldn't that open up a whole bunch of ethical problems?
Definitely. The ethical side of time travel is maybe even more complex than the science.
Like, what if someone went back in time and tried to stop something terrible from happening? Would that even be right? And what about all the consequences? Could even a small change in the past cause something awful to happen in the future?
That's a big question. Even with the best intentions, changing the past could have unintended consequences. We might think we're fixing things, but we could end up making things much worse.
You know, it reminds me of this story I read about an environmental project that went wrong. It was supposed to help the ecosystem, but it ended up causing a lot of damage. It just shows how even the best plans can backfire.
Exactly. And with time travel, the stakes are even higher. We're talking about changing history, the whole fabric of time. It's not something to take lightly.
So even if we figure out how to time travel, we have to think long and hard about the ethics. It's a huge responsibility.
Absolutely. And while we're figuring all of that out, let's not forget about the wonder of time travel. It's a concept that sparks our imagination, makes us question reality, and think about our place in the universe.
It really does. Time travel, even just as an idea, makes us curious and makes us think in new ways.
Absolutely. And even if we never build a time machine, the journey of exploration and expanding our knowledge is a journey in itself.
Well said. So, while we might not be hopping into time machines anytime soon, the idea of time travel is still something that captures our imagination. What are your thoughts after all this? Are you thinking about a trip to the past, a leap into the future, or maybe just enjoying the present moment?
That's a question we each have to answer for ourselves. It's about balancing the excitement of the unknown with the comfort of what we know.
And as we wrap up our exploration of time travel, maybe we can all take a moment to appreciate this present moment, this point in time where all our journeys come together. Okay, deep divers, time to come back up for air. We've gone from ancient myths to like the cutting edge of physics, mind-bending paradoxes, the vastness of space. What really sticks out to you from all of this?
You know, it's amazing to see how the idea of time travel has changed along with our understanding of science. From those early stories to Einstein's theories, we've come a long way in trying to figure out time.
It's true. We've gone from magic chariots to atomic clocks
Yeah.
and quantum entanglement, whatever that is. And even though we might not have a time machine yet, who knows what we'll discover in the future.
It's exciting to think about. And even if we never actually time travel, just exploring these ideas makes us smarter and more creative.
Yeah, it's like, even if we never get there, the journey itself is what matters. We've thought about paradoxes, alternate timelines, all these ethical questions. It's really stretched our imaginations.
It has. And in a way, we have DD time traveled. Through knowledge and ideas.
That's a good point. It's actually kind of fitting that we're talking about time travel on Christmas Day. I mean, this is a time of year when we think about the past a lot and appreciate the present and look forward to the future.
It is, yeah. It's about traditions, sharing stories, connecting with family across generations. It's like its own kind of time travel, passing down memories and values.
That's a really nice way to think about it.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe we can all just take a second to appreciate this present moment, this one point in time where everything comes together.
I like that.
So, to everyone listening, wherever and whenever you are, happy holidays. And we hope you have a season filled with joy and wonder and a real appreciation for time.
And keep sending us those sources. We're ready to dive into anything you throw our way.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop imagining.